So, welcome everyone to the People, Passion, and Purpose podcast with Pungi. I have Shri with me today. One of my most favorite and most awaited podcast. So, I met Shri I think a year ish before, and then it has been I think fantastic conversations with him, listening to him talk about books, Toastmasters, cricket, commentary, playing cricket, captaining certain teams, his work in terms of Toastmastering, and also alongside with coaching, writing, reading, and the list has gotten longer. And also his stories when he visits India and his hometown in Kerala. So a lot of very interesting stories, which I think would have been also interesting for all of you. So that's where I thought I'll bring Shri. And Shri, we are celebrating the 50th episode of this podcast. Thank you for gracing it as the guest.
Thank you, Sunil. Congratulations, first of all, on the 50th episode. And if I were to sit down and write a book, I wouldn't have had so much material as you made it out to be about me. But thank you for those insightful observations on my journey so far. It's been fantastic associating with you. One of those people who inspired me to continue the coaching journey in spite of all the challenges that you face, work-life balance and all. I have, as someone who represents the highest level of office in conglomerate, it leaves me with very little time to think. I have a lot of time, but I have very less energy to do other things outside office. So for me to be enjoying this journey, you're one of the prime reasons, along with others who are associated with you.
Thank you so much. But I think you're also having a lot of energy in terms of hiking, in terms of many other aspects. And I think if we had to put a word and ask you, saying what would be one thing that you would associate Shri with, I think Toastmasters comes in very very quickly in that area.
Absolutely. I'll tell you the Toastmasters journey. I was in Godrej in 1989 to 91 before I went on to sort of greener pastures, to Dubai to join my brother. So there was a gentleman called Dilip Joshi who was in charge of the HR department there. And for some reason, he had more faith in me than I had in myself. So he put me through to a supervisory development course. And he gave me a presentation, a couple of slides to be presented. I asked him, why are you putting me in this? I'm too junior to do this. So he said, I don't care whether you're junior or senior. I want you to grow. And I see potential in you. And he gave me a couple of slides. It was a very rewarding 1 week experience. And he gave me a couple of slides to present. That was a simple thing because we were in the service department. We were to talk about how marketing department or production have to be in service so that when new product is launched and marketed, the service should be aware. It should not happen. Let's take an example of a refrigerator. A simple thing as a gasket is costing gasket. The serviceman goes there and finds out that the new gasket has been refrigerated, but he goes with the old one. Now it leads to a lot of disgruntlement, repeated visits, and all that. Now, if only one information had gone on to the service department, he would have gone with the right stuff. It's all hunky-dory after that. So I was given, he said, you will be the third speaker. There are 5 speakers. You have to speak about this. This is your slide. I went there, looked at the people. I just froze. All I could say was, well, the importance of coordination between and marketing and service. What do I say more? Now I invite so-and-so to take over. Now the so-and-so happened to be the 5th speaker, not the 4th one. I was so nervous that I called the 5th speaker instead of the 4th one. And he somehow managed. We did that. And this was haunting me, whenever something happened in the office, somebody was relieving some. You had a lot of nice things to say, but it didn't come out. We were all tongue-tied. I had a colleague called Jenny Chandran. He's moved on to another organization now. So one day we were discussing and we realized that we need to do something about it. We had ideas, but we were not able to express. Forget about ideas. You had nice things to say to people, you were not able to say. But this is not the life we wanted to live. So we were looking at something. Then we chanced upon this forum called Toastmasters. It was happening a place in a restaurant. One of those clubs was meeting, and we went there as guests. And before you knew, we both were members. We paid our membership fee and realized that this was a platform for us. And what Toastmasters did for me is something that I can't describe in. It will take a couple of chapters for me to. I'll summarize it. If I did my master's course, it was because of Toastmasters. If I could stand in front of people, it was because of Toastmasters. And in 2007, part of the cultural activities of the company, we had a head called Vinu handling it, and I was always assisting him. And 2007, he felt terribly ill. He couldn't move, very high fever. And I got onto the stage. I was asked to take up the stage, and I got onto the stage and I was singing in tunes. Now we will have this, now we will have that. And way back home, my family members were asking me on the stage, you were supposed to talk. I didn't even realize that I was going in a swinging mood because I was so nervous. I didn't know what I was doing. I somehow managed. And then 2008, May, Toastmasters happened. From then onwards, I had to be pushed off the stage whenever we had these annual day festivities. And the general associated with me was, you give him this 2 minutes, he'll talk for 20 minutes because he's a Toastmaster. So that gave me the confidence to make presentations during the master's course and also be among the group, someone who was very happily hiding in the last bench actually occupied front bench during these courses. So
Wow.
it opened up a new world for me. There is no doubt about that.
So what draws you into Toastmasters?
Well, the initial draw was like if you had to make a speech, I am one of those so-called now I was rather getting into a little bit of detail, nitty-gritties and all. So whenever I wanted to speak, give a project speech, I wanted new material. Now this made me, so I made speeches on children as teachers, mother of all mothers, when I talked about Mother Teresa, the power of music, as mundane possibly and insightful as the power of oats, how we should be consuming more oats than we do. A lot of things happen, a lot of research happened. It got me into reading habit. And then I realized that I loved interaction with people and I learn a lot while interacting with people. So I wanted to be in every session. I wanted to be meeting people. I wanted to take their inputs. And most of all, it gave me that one thing that was lacking in my life, the listening ability, the desire to listen. So the desire to listen now, when you listen to a lot of Toastmasters, you get to listen to a lot of motivational stuff and all. But more importantly, the personal stories that they bring and the
Absolutely.
way they narrate is absolutely tremendous. I we were conducting championship contest for junior Toastmasters called Gavaliers. And because I was one of the organizers, I was doing a lot of running around. But one session that I sat through was the evaluation contest. And I was telling my friend sitting beside me, I have an honest admission that one day I want to be evaluating a speech like these kids do. They have their notes, but they don't refer to it. They say 3 points. They remember to come with the 3 points without referring to the notes. They're so good at analyzing the speech. Now, I'm saying evaluation because it happens impromptu. They prepare their evaluation notes. Every device is taken away. They have no access to the outside world except the people who are competing. They are put in an isolation room and they are brought to the contest room and given their note. But these people, the way they ingrained all these into their mind and the way they were presenting without missing out one point. And I'm saying without missing one point because you don't see them stuttering or struggling for words. It comes as a flow, like a river flowing. They knew what they, and they came up with the wonderful structure of evaluation. So I was forced to tell my colleague, my friend, that I wish I could present an evaluation report like these kids do. This satisfaction that you get from listening to people, getting to know anything is tremendous.
Oh, absolutely. I can sort of sense that in terms of the joy and other things, specifically in terms of, I think I've been to a few Toastmaster events myself. The conversations, the stories, the things that happen there, I think it's very, very inspiring. And once you like the space, I think it keeps on calling you.
Yeah, again, it depends on what level you are in. I probably started from the bottom of the, so I saw a lot of scope to improve. So every session was a step in improvement for me. For example, listening has been one of my weaknesses because I come from a family where we are very prompt in retorting, whether it was sarcasm or retorting. And that, like they say there is a saying in Malayalam that what you're born with your goes with your funeral pyre. Uh, manage, they
Mm.
say. So that's one challenge that I had to overcome. It is still a challenge. So it happens very gradually because many times when people say something, you come up with a one-liner because people have accepted you as one-liner and you tend to live up to that image. Somehow it gets the better of you.
So,
So one thing, that's one thing that drives you, like ability to restrain and retrain your.
again, restrain and retain. So there is a lot of, I think, wordplay with somebody who's, like a master at Toastmasters. So that I've seen with you, and I think your sense of humor, I think, is on point. So how did that come to us? Was it an acquired taste, or you've been born with that?
Several. I didn't get the question.
Sense of humor.
Do I have a sense of humor?
I
I
don't
don't know.
know.
Yeah, like I said, my father was very strict that while we have meals, we should not have any conversation. But a couple of us were very naughty, my younger brother and me, and we came up with some remarks from time to time, witty remarks. And once it so happened that he laughed out so loud, he started spilling, he ended up spilling everything from his mouth. But that was one time he was not upset. Then he realized the power of having funny conversations. So probably this was probably encouraged by people around you. And then our favorite pastime was what as grinding mirchi or chilies on somebody else's head growing up. This is a large family. We are patriarchal. We had pretty much
Mhm.
less things to do as men in the family. So the only other thing left to do was look for a scapegoat and go after him.
So I'm now very curious. So what all anecdotes, what all stories do we have from childhood that you?
Child,
Mm.
well, you talked about wordplay. I don't know if I can explain this in English, but there was a house that was on fire, and I was
Mhm.
probably 8 or 9 at that time. I don't even remember, maybe 7 or 8 at that time. So I went there and I was talking to the lady of the house. There was a lot of people trying to put out the fire and all. And somebody reminded that lady about kolam. Kolam is that rangoli that you put in front of the house.
Mhm.
Okay. Now alangolam is the exact opposite of that. It's a mess.
Mhm.
So when that person asked this lady about the kolam, which is rangoli, I took the liberty of answering saying, when the whole house is alangolam. How will she think about kolam? So my father hauled me aside and gave me a bit, physical and verbal. But I guess it came from genes. But that was one thing that I will always remember when it comes to restraint. Whether I've been able to master that or not, I still don't know. I'm still trying to master that restraint. Like I said, restraining and retraining your thoughts.
Anything else that is less intense than a burning house?
No, 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 not much. We've always had these little things, but I can't recall anything. It's just that, see, at a very young age, I had to assist my father in his village ritual because he was doing the puja ritual. We hardly had time for anything else other than playing. We somehow found time to play cricket after school hours, but not for any other things. We grew up in an environment when everybody had to pull in their
Hmm.
resources to get the chula going at home. Not
Hmm.
much moolah. If the chula had to go on, everybody had to pull in. That's why this en masse migration to Mumbai in 78, we had to migrate while I was still my school in Kerala.
Hmm. So how's that time of growing up in say an India and an emerging India?
It was not that emerging India in 78, at least not in the place that we used to live.
Hmm.
Even when we shifted to Mumbai, for example, um, I passed my time in spite of a lot of challenges. Came out to Mumbai when the languages were advanced here. And
Hmm.
I came from a place where advanced, it was not advanced. We were learning basics in languages. And that too, I would be wrong if learning because we were going to the school, but not learning much. We were very happy through a stone and we had a strike and we all had to go home. So go from the front side of the house and after an hour come back from the backyard. That's when my mother decided that enough is enough. And she wrote to my father that we need to shift. So there was not much happening. It was a challenge. In spite of that, I passed my 10th in spite of being under the influence of fever. No, I don't know that. I can't recall whether that fever was actual fever, but I had fever at that time. But when it came to 12th, the lack of basic started hitting me. I just couldn't manage. So I failed in my 12th standard. That's when I realized that the power of the influence of people around you. Everybody came. Why didn't you do something? Why didn't you do something? Why are you sitting at home doing nothing? And all that. Number of that I realized the number of advisors that the family had at that time. We had so many advisors.
Hmm. Sometimes advices become vices.
Yeah, so many. But it ended up in my first job also. Somebody referred me to a job. Then I had to go through a lot of things to get my graduation done and my post graduation done and all. But the journey itself was very tough in the sense I made tough for me for by myself. It's not that the family had any interference on that. I was the first one to get to the college from the family. So I had that privilege, but I misused that privilege or I didn't use it wisely. Now, the thing I was saying that we were strive as a family, we were so busy earning our livelihood that nobody thought that I could get into a private tuition and get over the other side to the other side as far as 12th exams were concerned. We just gave up. I gave up as an individual. Family did not think about it. All they thought about was, I mean, I'm not blaming them. That was the circumstances under which we were living in. So
Hmm.
when you talked about the sense of humor, we probably had a lot of moments of sadness, and it would have ended up in black humor if somebody developed humor at that time. Probably, I sense of develop. I mean, I developed sense of humor probably after that. We had this, and we had one paternal uncle who was very good at these one-liners. We probably imbibed all that from him. But it was difficult trying to get into the humor part. And
Hmm. Hmm. And what's one thing about your life that you feel is an unforgettable story?
if you want to go back to the humor thing, I'll tell you. When I talked about the naivety part, when I failed in my 12th standard, it so happened that I was so confident about my exams that I went to the university gate, met one of my friends. He said, "No, you failed." And I went back home without checking my own results. And then later I realized that I could have looked at it, and there were two pending. I could have written that later next year. I did that. But the confidence that I had in myself and the naivety of the situation was what I was saying. And at the gate, I met that guy. He said, "You have failed." And I went home, quite confident that this is what was to happen without, without bothering to do anything about it. Later, I realized that when one of my other friends also said that, "Arey, we are in the same boat, we can clear these two papers." And there was this thing called, if you fail in March, you can write in October and get through. The
Mm-hmm.
KT at that time, allowed to keep terms.
So from from that stage of failing in 12th to now, being in a place of I can say leadership and uh, many other aspects along with Toastmasters, the work that you do in Muscat. So how did that shift happen?
Necessity is the mother of invention. You had to push yourself hard because one of my
Mm-hmm.
greatest challenges was to master the language when we came to Mumbai. Like I said, as it is in South India, we don't pay a lot of importance to Hindi and English. We have this bookish knowledge of English and Hindi, not the practical knowledge. So people started making fun when we asked this, "Aap kahan rehte hai?" with that nasal tone, like, "अरे ऐसा कौन बोलता है यार?" It's- So to overcome that, work hard. And at that time, I remember Shah Rukh Khan, who never used this word mere ko. I don't know how he does now, but he always used mujhko. So
Mm.
from people like that, up, and for English language, it was about on Saturdays we used to have half day working. So I used to take the slow train, at least 1 hour 20 minutes to my place from the workplace. So I used to solve crosswords. And on Saturdays, we had this jump. We had that afternoon career at that time in Mumbai. Besides midday, I think is still publishing. So buy both the papers, spend my time solving crosswords. Now, with solving crosswords is it leads to new words, and you start looking at the meanings and context. Sometimes you solve the crossword by context, sometimes by meaning from the word. So that led me to Roget's Thesaurus, which was the in thing at that time because I couldn't manage Ren and Martin. And I was way beyond those years of Ren and Martin. So the next best thing I could rely on was Roget's Thesaurus. And then something like this happened when something like this happened in Godrej with that Dilip Joshi head at that time. He was a junior executive actually. He himself was a junior executive. Very interesting about this Dilip Joshi was the lesson that he told me. I mean, showed me. 3 months into the job, he went to the central personal department, as it was called at that time, the central HR department, and said, "I would like to be evaluated." Those guys were shocked. Imagine an organization like Godrej, which is built their own systems, and there's somebody going and saying, "I would like to be evaluated." So that's the kind of guy that Dilip Joshi was. So he played a big role in my development into others, and because then that meant that I was exposed to a lot of training programs in Godrej. Whenever there was a training program, I was either involved in organizing with the team. I had access to the programs themselves. Whether it was Suzuki's, starting with the physical exercise and getting into nitty-gritties of service, being similar things that probably led me to take up more things. In spite of being the junior most, I was given more responsibilities there. And then there was another gentleman called Anil Jain who played a big role. He was unfortunately passed away during COVID. but he was one of those brightest minds that I've met. Very, very tough on you, but at the same time, very friendly of the office. He gave a lot of lessons. He would draft a letter to the office and read in front of people, ask for people's opinion, whether he accepted that or not. But he made sure that he loved drafting letters. And some of the things that he said still remains with me. We are enclosing the same. What enclosing? There is no same. Define. And he hated repeating words. So these things have helped me get better in my written communication. But to whatever level I am, I'm not saying I'm a big writer, whatever level I am. These are the people who have helped. And the other person that I would like to mention here is a gentleman called Matiti Surender. He was the head of service. That person, we had a very open area of operation. We cubicle or cabin. Everybody worked together because we were following the Japanese style. We were basing our training and all on Suzuki and all that. We are very, and at that time the word was rampant, total quality management. So we had everything going Japanese way, including the office atmosphere. So he knew exactly pick up to reprimand, which guy not to reprimand, and which guy could be saddled with more responsibilities. So much so that when I talked about Ideology, we had an organization that I was working up to 1 o'clock in the night. I mean, home at 1 o'clock in the morning and all. I mean, most of it was passing time between dinner and all. But we left office very late, which meant we had late dinner and we reached home very late. I was given an ultimatum, either this house or by my parents. That's when Godrej happened. So one day, Matiti Surender, this head of service, told me that I may have to sick leave. So I immediately said, no problem. I said, don't say yes because I'm your boss. You can check with your folks at home. Now I was thinking inside, this is a guy who was going home at 1 in the morning and he's been asked to stay back for 10 or 15 minutes. How do I tell him that these 10 or 15 minutes are peanuts? But that's the kind of leader that he was. Made sure that people were comfortable working with him. And he knew what he was doing. Like he had a round of shop floor, and which was the next plant next to us where we were working, next to our office. He'll just go around listening to people. He will not say anything. He will not reprimand anyone at that time. He'll come back to his office, gather his thoughts, and then call up the guys who were in charge of the floor, separate that shop floor. So he had this great ability to be among the people without imposing his views or making his presence overwhelming or something. So I've had this advantage of working with people who are we often talk about bosses as devils, but I've had fantastic bosses to work with. So they give us a lot of lessons, how to treat humans, your co-workers as humans. And when I came to Dubai, there was a Lebanese American, I think his name is Samir Al Baba. And I'm saying this name because I'm saying positive about them. Once we were talking about this, somebody came and this work atmosphere, and somebody came and said, "It's a pleasure to work for you, Samir Al Baba." He said, "Excuse me, sorry, nobody works for me. We work together."
Wow.
Now, he didn't mean only in words. That's the way he worked. Before he could ask us to sit late and all, the first thing he did was make sure that the pizza was delivered. So you had one thing less to complain about.
Yeah, like pizza is already here, so now make sure you're, get the work done.
Yeah, the company that I worked for in Dubai at that time had the franchise for Pizza Inn, so it came at a discount. But
I
that was
I
beyond the
quite never
point.
understood the concept of pizza. I'm like, give me curd rice. Like I am a curd rice kind of a guy. Pizza is not our way of work. And so yeah, I think very less pizzas that I have had to eat, but a lot of staying late as well. But you were talking about draft letters, so I wanted to check. So have you written any love letters?
Love letters, no, but I loved writing.
And this is a family-friendly podcast. So I think even if there is, we can always talk about it offline.
Oh no, if I have to talk, that's another chapter. I will need another 2 chapters on that because I got married to a lady who was not ready to get married at that time, barely out of college.
Oh, interesting.
And this will go back to all the family circumstances, how we were oriented towards thinking different from what you would think as an individual, family concerns and all. So that would need another 2 chapters, you know.
And also seeking permission from your wife, saying, in a podcast, this is what I'm going to be sharing.
Ah, no, that I think we are past that phase. Got married in 93.
Okay, that's 31 years.
Hmm. So that seeking permission phase is passed on. It's now understanding. We look at each other and we understand what we feel.
Oh, fantastic. So you've had machine learning come to the rescue and data mining come to the rescue.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So what's the secret for 30 years of successful marriage?
The secret is that we never thought that we are just living together. We never looked at it as a success or failure. We went the Mahi way. We believed in the processes. We just got around doing things that we have to do without judging our relationship.
Hmm. So you bring Mahi, I think we also say are at that phase in the podcast where I think we've yet to breach on your interest and passion towards cricket. So how did that happen? I think our first time we met, as I think in terms of coaching, you talked about Harsha Bogle, then ESPN Cricket Info, then a lot of stories around cricket. I think you brought up that Paddy Upton this thing. So I was like, oh my God, there is so much of anecdotes with Sri. So I think we're at that right segue to bring around cricket and how cricket entered your life and your adventures with it.
I think I would go before the pre-Harsha Bogle era. I don't know if he was associated with cricket commentary at that stage, but around 99, 2000, I started reading articles by Prem Panikkar.
Mm, right. Mm.
Okay. Before that, what happened was we had this radio commentary that my brother was very fond of listening to. So this Dicky Ratnakars and these Anand Settlewords and all, you know. And there was this Hindi commentator, I think Sushil Doshi or Sunil Doshi. And he was the one who made this, coined this phrase, जितनी उम्दा shot उतनी उम्दा fielding, जितनी अच्छी shot उतनी अच्छी fielding and all, you know, playing upon words, bringing those rhyming words and all. So I loved listening to that. And my one of my elder brothers was a big fan of West Indies. So we always had this argument about who is best. So I was probably oriented towards this Isaac Vivian, Alexander Richards, and Clive Hubert Lloyd and all. And one of my passions was remembering their full names and all. For some reason, weird reason, I used to remember. Like Syed Mustafa, Hussein Kirmani, and all that. Now, some of them, I can't say I remember all of them. So around 2000, I think Prem Panikar and company, I think that he had five, if I'm not mistaken, Siddharth Monga, who writes for ESPN Cricket for now, was part of the team. 3 or 4 of them. I think they were instrumental in bringing Rediff.com to fruition. They were part of, if I'm not mistaken, India Abroad IANS, India Abroad News Service. So Prem Panikar had this great analytical mind, floored by his analysis of Harbhajan Singh's bowling. You know, how he got his victims on the leg side, forward and backward short leg, especially backward short leg because of the bounce and turn that he got. And he had these graphics supporting his ideas. And then he went on to describe Indian cricket's mundane affair that had a greater effect, whether it was Azharuddin's captaincy or Sachin Tendulkar's captaincy. And his views on Tendulkar's captaincy is very revealing. Now, when I say very revealing, he doesn't leave on his opinion. He by solid facts. how Tendulkar was given something when he asked for something else. There was a famous story that I don't know if you remember. Story of Sunil Gavaskar and Dilip Doshi's relationship. There was a story that they didn't get along at all. Sunil Gavaskar was the captain and Dilip Doshi, when he asked for a square leg, Sunil Gavaskar would give him bit off. So I don't know how far it is true, but I've heard of this story. So similar to that was Tendulkar captaincy story. We see only the failure part of Tendulkar, but if you read Prem Panikar's analysis, you will realize that there was so much more into his failure that he was not in control of. Fact is that he couldn't control, Tendulkar couldn't control. And whether it was Prem Panikar or Harsha Bhogle or the one of the greatest advantages of reading their books was the links that they provided. They never told you that we are larger than life, we knew everything. For example, one of the that Prem Panikar linked to was the art of failure. Now, the art of failure via Amit Verma, who is a big pastor and writer. Now, Amit Verma was one of the senior editors, if I'm not mistaken, in Wisden before it became ESPN Cricket Info. And he's a wonderful writer and podcaster. The Unseen, I think, TSTU. He runs a podcast by that time, even now. And his
Mhm.
podcasts are about 2 to 3 hours long, and it is still popular. They are still popular. So they provide these links, which leads from one thing to another. Now, Prem Panikar to Amit Verma to Marshall Goldsmith. Marshall Goldsmith had written something like The Art of Failure, where he differentiates between choking and panicking. Now,
Mhm.
it's not all about theories. When he talks about that, he talks about the example of Yana Novotná, who lost the Wimbledon finals in spite of leading 4-1 in the final set. Now imagine somebody losing from 4-1 or 4-0, I don't know, but she was four, four games ahead in that set and they went on to lose that. She just didn't know how to win. She froze. Now, whether that was panic joking is brilliantly analyzed by this article. So a lot of these links led me to reading a lot of. I might not be reading a lot of books, but I started reading a lot of articles by these people, especially ESPN Cricket Info. It's my Bible when it comes to cricket. I keep going back to old articles. I keep going back to the links for various players. I was having a discussion with someone. So I was just for the sake of argument, I was saying you're talking about anybody who is scoring currently is drafted into the team. Yeah, what is it? I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying for the sake of argument. Why did you get Ricky Bui? So he said, who is Ricky Bui? Was a former under 19 player and he's in form now. So this Ricky Bui happens because I happen to follow Ranji Trophy also. Ricky Bui has been in the news along with Hanuma Vihari, which I don't know whether it is Andhra Pradesh or Hyderabad that they play for. But Ricky Bui has been one guy who has been scoring heavily, but he has not had a look in after his under 19 days. So these insights happen because I keep visiting ESPN Cricket Info from time to time, and they are very good with this data management when it comes to cricket. Not only cricket, I mean, I sports. Mm, Before getting into diversified areas, I used to follow tennis religiously, especially the Grand Slams, and football World Cup 82, 86, and 90 will always be etched in my memory, especially 86, what they call as Maradona's World Cup.
And oh God.
A lot of insights into this came from Prem Panikar. Faisal, I don't know where Faisal Sharif is now. I wish I could. He was a wonderful writer as well. I'm sure he is still. He is going to do. Uh, I'm still a wonderful. Hey, what do you mean? I was a wonderful writer.
Oh, fantastic. So how do you manage to find so much of time? There's hiking, Toastmasters, then reading, working, obviously, coaching. So how do you manage to find so much of time?
See, the mental learnings happen in the morning. I'm an early riser, and I don't do a lot in the mornings. I believe morning is for mental and physical exercise as far as walking or running are concerned. Okay, so I do, since like I say, I'm more into articles than books. So I have to read bit by bit. It takes time for me to read. So I keep telling myself that, okay, it's okay. I don't have to give an exam now. Now, it's a different fact that I have to follow certain timelines with regard to coaching. But otherwise, there is no compelling reason for me to finish a book in so many days.
Mm.
So, and then you earlier asked me about this Toastmasters also. What happens is, I had this idea along with a couple of others. We thought that we should have a Toastmasters club that will encourage reading.
Mm.
So we came up with a Toastmasters club called Rediscovery, where someone will review a book. Then what happens is you come across books that you've never heard of.
Mm.
Reviewed a movie called The Boy in Striped Pajamas.
Yeah,
Pajamas. So this is something that I had never heard of. But when I heard of this book, I was so intrigued. Now I'm compelled to watch that.
it's a good watch. It's a very interesting watch.
So every Toastmaster session for me, you ask me about Toastmaster, it's like equivalent to reading a couple of books. People give you so much insights. One day probably I'll be able to decipher or dissect the Barefoot Coach by Paddy Upton
Very
also.
often.
How they came about their plans for. I mean, the 2011 World Cup win didn't happen overnight. They started planning from 2007.
Mm.
First thing they wrote was to be the number one test team in the world. Then came the World Cup. Then two other goals that they have written down. There's so many insights in that book. I mean, so many leadership lessons.
You're well set to be a motivational speaker and that could be a thing that you can take up after your retirement.
Hopefully, yes.
But are you planning to retire? So what would retirement look like, or what would retirement mean for you?
Retirement would mean that being my own boss, but I would still be active. I see dealing with people.
Hmm.
I love interacting with people. And one of the books that influenced me, I must say, is a book called The Last Lecture by
Mm-hmm.
Randy Pausch. In 2012, I had a health scare. For some reason, that I was in the fourth stage of cancer. I had a tumor. And they were all ready to they prepared the suit for me for radiation and all that. Somehow I survived. And that's when I coined this term for myself that do serious things in life, but live life light.
Mm.
You get much of stress from people around you, from your own self. It's not worth it. And Randy Pausch's book was a revelation for. Apart from the fact that he exercise, he starts by showing his exercising his body, saying that I'm fit. He had a liver cirrhosis and he was going to die. He knew that, but he starts by exercising now. And then he goes on to narrate his lifestyle. Apart from that, being a motivation for me to, live life as it should be lived. The other thing, one of the other lessons that he taught me from that was not everybody who criticizes you has bad intention.
Mm.
Look at the other side. Why would they take the time to come and criticize you? Because they see something in you, they want you to improve. A person who is ready to give up on you will never come and criticize to you. He will go and tell others that this guy is bad. Not
Wow.
criticism for improvement.
Absolutely. I think that is very true.
So I'm able to relate this to the evaluation part of Toastmasters. When you start giving feedback, over a period of time, you tend to realize that I'm giving so many points for improvement in a speech. Am I doing it? So the
Mm.
increase in your awareness level is tremendous. And implementing it, though I keep saying that it's a challenge when it comes to coaching, because in evaluation you're supposed to be advising, whereas in coaching you're supposed to be applying restraint. As long as you have separated these ideas, concepts, and you are able to come up clearly as to what you want to say and what you want to do in their separate fields, I think you can do a wonderful job as a coach, as an evaluator. And I love mentoring. When I say I love mentoring, I might not be the greatest of mentors, but I always believe that there is somebody below the rung who looks up to me.
Oh, yeah.
I might not be able to sit and advise Sunil on what to do in terms of career, but there might be somebody who might be looking for, and there is a lot of them, believe me. There's a lot of them who look up to others, not necessarily because you're a hero, but they have seen your intention to help them. Number one. Number two, that you're ready to spare time for them. More than anything else, as you might have come across people from your observation of people, a lot of people have a lot of things in them. They just need to be told that you can do it. And the next step, as by Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers, is I always tell them how to do it. You go with people who can tell you you can do it, fair. But more than that, go with people who tell you how you can do it. Those are the people who will take you far and long.
Oh, fantastic. I think a lot of very strong insights, but also a lot of these books. So how do you remember all of these? Like this book, this person said this.
Well, they say that the more you teach, the more you learn.
Mm.
So when I talked about everything, I keep bringing these books once in a while. Okay, there'll be someone who will be somebody random will come up and say, "Hey, what is that book by Marshall Goldsmith that you said you said it changed your life?" I say, "What got you here won't get you there." Now, why it is important? A lot of books will tell you what to do. In Marshall Goldsmith's book, "What got you get you there," he's talking about when you reach a certain level, you need to eradicate the 20 habits that you need to eradicate. He's added one more, success delusion. I'll tell you that one success delusion thing. Very often we fall into this trap. He's right. He says, because I have done this and I have succeeded, this must be the right way.
Mm.
And people fall into that delusion. And it made a lot of sense to a lot of people will tell you don't punish the messenger, correct? But the example that he has come up with, at least for me, it resonated well with what we are doing, because whether it is your office boy who comes up with something that you don't like, a document or an instruction, or a waiter who comes with the badly cooked dish, what is our first reaction? To yell at them. How are they responsible for this? So you know a lot of things, but you need somebody to tell you that this is wrong, you can do better than this. And by examples and authentic anecdotes, it stays in your mind. So when you asked me about this, one of the things that I was telling people was this, that you go with people who tell you that you can do it. And I gave them an example of insights from outliers. Now, a lot of people tell you that people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates were dropouts. But how many people are aware as to what Bill Gates went through when he was before he dropped out? Apparently, he was living very close to university, where he had a mainframe all to himself and his friend. And probably, this is what Malcolm Gladwell says, in the couple of years that he had practiced, he must have done more hours than a graduate will do in the 4 years of his.
Yeah.
So therefore, he could drop out. Now, people like you and me cannot drop out because unless we have that exposure. So this doesn't get told. So the wrong message is sent that dropouts can be, also become millionaires. No, millionaires by just dropping out or because their father or grandfather gave them so much money. Even for them to manage that money, they need some skills, some expertise, correct?
Yeah.
How many second generation businessmen have become successful?
Not a very, very interesting thing. So I think, Shri, one of the things that I think I loved about conversations with you is all of these anecdotes that seem to, just simply flow from, Bill Gates. I think Bill Gates was also part of our original first time conversation, I think you told. And you'd sent me a small book. I don't remember the name of the book. And it said, Pung, you should read this. I forgot.
Managing oneself, Peter. I think
Mm,
that also gave me a lot of
mm.
insights. You knowing your strengths and weaknesses, that gets told. Like, for example, I was talking to Nazaruddin, who is a coach in Just Cricket in Bangalore, when I had taken my son for training there. My son was part of the under 19 team of Oman. Ganguly, the success of Ganguly. The same thing that Peter Drucker says, he was giving me an example. Now, I can never forget that because the example that he gave with me brilliantly. I always admired Ganguly. He says Ganguly never thought about his inability to play bouncers or short pitch balls. He backed his strengths to play offside strokes or the pulls that came onto of his chest level. He could pull easily. He worried about that, how to strengthen that, which is something that Paddy Upton also is saying. I mean, there's a 10,000 rule that Malcolm Gladwell says in his book Outliers, which is sort of debunked by Paddy Upton in his book. If you're mediocre in something and you spend 10 hours, 10,000 hours, you will probably get to good. But try putting up, he gives a lot of formulas there for success, the excellence part. Try from going from good to great, you put a lot of efforts on that, great to excellent. That's where it will help you. Just merely by saying that I can spend 10,000 hours on this, I'll get better, is something that is not going to work. So Ganguly probably realized that it's a waste of time trying to get better at the short pitch ball on the leg side. And that made Rahul Dravid say that the god on the offside.
Oh, yeah. And then I think his entire peak of his career, I think that cover drive was one of my favorites. I think all left-handers, I think they're blessed with that cover drive.
In fact, when I went to one of the academies where my son was undergoing training in I gave them a presentation on, be attitude, how to bring about attitude. Bring an attitude like Boris Becker. Come what may, his effort will be to make sure that the ball doesn't pass him. He will dive, he will fall, he will do anything. One of the best divers in tennis. Left or right, he made sure that he dived. He made sure that one, he was serve and volley specialist, so he came to the nets always. Once you come into the net, one of the your fears is that the ball is going to pass. Somebody is going to hit a pass shot. He made sure that he died, he fell, whatever. He flew, but to make sure that the ball doesn't pass. So when you're a fielder, make sure that this is your attitude. You've rushed. The other thing that I showed them was Ganguly's attitude. Ganguly was very famous for getting down the wicket and hitting the spinners a long way. But you've very seldom seen him getting. Once he was committed, he stayed committed. He'll put his foot, he'll put his body on the line, whatever it is. He made sure that something hit the ball. So the chances of his getting stumped were minimalized. He might have got stumped. I don't know. I don't keep a track of that. But very often he made sure that his coming out of the crease counted, if not for runs, but at least negation of dismissals.
Wow. So who's your favorite cricketer?
I don't attach any favorites because then you get biased. For example, I'll tell you when we talk about confirmation bias. I used to think that Bharat was the best option for us as far as Test wicket keeping is concerned. Then I saw this Jurel keeping and they were selected, and I was watching this match today. Is keeping it was a bit tough, bit scratchy, that as you would expect a first timer to do. Is somebody who has come from junior cricket to senior straight, so not if not straight away, pretty fast. In the mind, the devil in my mind was saying this guy should fail. So my confirmation bias kicks in, like, so Bharat can come back. I mean, why is Bharat? This is what happens when you attach yourself to this favorite tag. But
Yeah,
I have nothing to do. He's not my relative. He doesn't pay me money. He doesn't give me pleasure in terms of as much as Tendulkar or Kohli does. You still have this because you're holding on to it. The same thing happened with me when Pradhiman Saha was replaced by Dhoni.
mm.
And I couldn't digest the fact that Saha was someone who was asked to be an extra, one of the most efficient keepers that we have had, being asked to be part of the team, be present when needed, when a more flamboyant and less experienced, less skilled, I dare say, wicketkeeper was asked to be taking over from that guy. These things make you feel bad. But then you realize it's not my business. You enjoy what is on your plate.
You get
Don't
it.
like it, push it away, move on.
I think that is a very, very interesting space in terms of confirmation bias. So there were many times where I wanted India to win, but Muralidharan to pick up 5 wickets.
Hmm.
My
The
more.
same thing happens with when I watch, for example, I just couldn't digest Steffi Graf being beaten by someone very junior and so rough as Monica Seles, when she came in. So I like these people who are finesse oriented, like nice finishes. Stefan Edberg, Roger Federer. I like Djokovic and Nadal's games. I admire Nadal's determination. In fact, I think Malcolm Gladwell mentions in his book Nadal's routine. The first thing he does after winning a championship is go to the gym at 5 o'clock early in the morning to stay grounded, to tell himself that he has to now start work. And that guy's determination level
It's crazy.
shows in the ground coverage. Like I said about Becker, this guy doesn't anything in the court. He wants to pick up from every corner of the court. Court coverage is tremendous.
Mm. I think one of the things I observed, Sri, is I think the depth of topics that you get into, the stories that you remember, the way in which you tell stories. So, if I had to ask, at least for this podcast, episode 1 of this podcast, to close this conversation, if you had to tell one story to close, what would that story be?
It will still be Randy Pausch's the last lecture.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of books that touched. For example, when we were doing the masters, there was a professor called Colonel Sunil Brijkishan. By the way, great storyteller, great motivational speaker. He referred to a lot of books. Referred us to a lot of books, like Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. He
Mm-hmm.
referred to Catch 22. I mean, I'm only saying something that I can remember. But one of the books that he referred to us and that made a huge impact was Tuesdays with Maury.
Mm-hmm.
It's written by a guy called Mitch Albom. So Maury was Mitch Albom's professor, and he wanted to celebrate death before it happened.
Tuesdays in Murray, correct.
So he asked this question. So why do people come up with the eulogies and all after people die? Why don't they celebrate my life when they are when I'm alive?
Very, very
So
moving.
after that, the other book that impacted me was, of course, Randy Pausch. Probably resonated with me at that time because I was undergoing that personal health crisis. But there is no, I wouldn't say there is a story that I can narrate as something that can be left as a closing remark. It's been a I'm bringing Sanjay Manjrekar and his remarks on Jadeja. It's been a bits and pieces thing. I wouldn't put myself into, but great story. If it has to be made, it has to start from the everything else that I did, whether it was taking charge of the annual day festivities in the company, organization that I work for, the public speaking, the ability to evaluate speeches, the ability to listen, most importantly, comprehend, analyze, and report. Now, one of the greatest advantage of being in a Toastmasters session is the ability to structure your thoughts into 5 to 7 minute speeches on one side, and on the other side, to sit as a member of the audience, as an evaluator, listen to the speech. And when I say you have to actively listen, because you're going to present a speech 20 minutes hence or something. You don't have a whole day to analyze and come back. You don't have the facility of replaying to check what the speaker did. You listen to the speech as it happens, listen to it, comprehend it. And when I say analyze, analyze what is that you want to bring to the table when you present an evaluation report. 2 or 3 important points, because if you analyze and present the whole speech, you will take more time than the speaker to present the speech. And we have had instances when people went on to speak for 10 minutes on a 7 minute. The evaluation report is supposed to be for 3 2 minutes or 3.5 minutes max. But I myself have gone to 4.5 minutes in my early days, not being able to structure this. The thing is, when we start recommending, we have a lot of recommendations because we are possibly negatively wired more than positive. So we tend to advise a lot than take in. So we spend a lot of time on this recommendation part. That's where we go wrong and we go on and on. You could have also done this, you could have done this, you could have done this, you could have done this, the list goes on. So if a story has to be written, it has to start from Toastmasters where the listening part started.
Wow. I've thoroughly enjoyed the 1 hour plus conversation with you. And it's I think we've just scratched the surface, in terms of Jadeja and Manjrekar story. So picture abhi baki hai. There's a lot of 300s to be scored. There's a lot of fifers to be got, and Manjrekar to be like basically silenced for some time.
No,
So
Manjrekar also leads me to another view, but that we can discuss in another, because there are some people who are analysts. There are some people who are commentators.
so which one are you?
I don't know. I think I'm more of an analyst. I'm more of a writer than a speaker. So I always struggle with Toastmaster speeches. But when I have to write, I write better.
So you wouldn't have come up with remember the name.
What do I remember the name?
Ian Bishop, Carlos Brathwaite.
I remember the name. I remember. Yeah. Carlos Brathwaite.
4 6s in the, I think, ICC T20 World Cup.
But see what happens is you tend to remember the old ones and it becomes difficult to erase. For example, when Sandeep Patil went on a tour of England and he scored a century, I remember, I don't know who the commentator was, but what a way to bring his 100. It's taking 4 fours of a Willis over. And then Sandeep Patil scores another 2 fours in that over. I think in that over he scored 6 fours. But in the fourth four boundary, he scored a century. So those things you remember, and one of those left-armers wickets, I think Dicky Ratnagar mentioned Vivian Richards being taken out by someone. Typical, that's a typical left-armers wicket caught in the first slip. And remember the name, of course. Some things do stay on.
Wow, yeah. So I think there are lots more stories, lots more analyst views, that we can get into episode 2, and possibly make it more about, the analyst point, and the more things about Toastmasters, more of a masterclass from you rather than a podcast. So hoping to catch you again, and yeah, much joy in making it this 50th episode.
Thank you very much for this platform, and you've been a wonderful listener. I keep talking about my listening, honing my, but it also comes from watching people like you listen. I mean, it's not easy when someone speaks very passionately about something. It's not easy to restrain that person without wanting to
Oh
be
yeah.
interrupting him.
Oh yeah,
So that needs a lot
absolutely.
of patience. So thank you for giving this platform. Hopefully we'll catch up possibly with the book Paddy Up, because there's a lot in this book than the coaching, cricket coaching.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So that's the episode 2 then. So we'll make it about Paddy Upton. We'll make it about cricket. And I think there's going to be a lot more viewership to that. In terms of the analysts, in terms of all the other activities. So thank you, Shri, for making time on a Saturday and gracing this episode with me. Thank you.
Same. Thank you for taking giving this platform.